Hello and welcome to another episode of Unmanned Uncovered with me, your host, Bryn Lucas. This podcast is brought to you by Consortiq, here to help you take your drone program to new heights. To find out more, just go to Consortiq, that's Consortiq with a Q at the end, .com. My guest this week is a man who works for Consortiq. He is the Commercial Manager UK and EMEA. And he's here to tell us all about some of the latest projects he's been working on with Consortiq and also talk about the state of the drone industry. So please welcome my guest this time, Lee Barfoot. First of all, Lee, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast.
No worries. Thank you very much for having me.
Now, I'm not sure if you've ever been on this podcast before, so I'm going to pretend or assume you haven't. Am I correct?
That is correct. I mean, we've done stuff together work-wise, but not podcast related. So yeah, this is a first for me.
Welcome along. It's relatively harmless. All you have to do is just talk, and you're good at that. So you should be fine.
I will try and limit the waffle.
Nothing wrong with waffles. I like waffles, especially Belgian ones. Now, this podcast, by the way, I should let you know that we're recording this very much remotely, and I'm at the top of my house with very poor internet reception. And seeing as we're talking technology, it seems ironic, but hopefully it will all go smoothly. So just bear with us. If there are any weird bits, it's probably that I've had to edit round it. So, just bear with us through the podcast. First of all, Lee, I think it's best if you just introduce yourself, really. Who are you? What do you do at Consortiq? And how did you get to be there?
So I'm described as either a really short man or a tall boy. I've been with Consortiq 5 years now. I predominantly look after the sort of commercials for UK and EMEA. And obviously I work alongside marketing really closely. And that's essentially what I do. I am the conduit between our services and the products that we provide and the client and the customer. And I try and bring those two together.
Sounds fantastic. The conduit between. I liked it. EMEA, by the way, stands for Europe, Middle East and Africa, doesn't it?
It does indeed, yeah. I'd just like to use the short acronyms.
I've learned over the last 12 months or so, or longer, in fact, where I've been doing things with Consortiq, that if anything, the UAS industry loves an acronym.
Yeah, we do. We do love an acronym.
Who doesn't? Well, actually, sometimes I can get a little bit like, oh, just say the real thing. But with EMEA, I think it's probably a little bit easier. So, okay, then. So you've told us a little bit about what you do, very, very basically. But how did you get to work at Consortiq? What was your interest in working in, should we just say drones? It's easier, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm what you'd classify as like an aerosexual. Hopefully we can use that on this podcast, but I generally do like aircraft. I'm a bit of a spotter, not serious, but I do like going to the air shows. I've learnt to fly. I've gone solo in a light aircraft. I'm still working towards my license, but that's never ending. And it was just an interest. It's always been an interest to me, aviation, and I've predominantly worked in sales and marketing pretty much since I left school in a completely different industry, but ultimately selling and marketing of products and services is very similar regardless of the industry that you go in. And I decided to take the leap about 5 years ago. Went for a job interview, went through the process that Consortiq had at the time, and joined the team and sort of developed over the last 5 years and building up really good relationships with some huge players and huge accounts within the UK. And we're fortunate that we can work across the pond, and I work really closely with the US guys as well, which it's good to see both sides of it, really.
Yeah, from my time of being involved with Consortiq, I should say I don't actually work for Consortiq as an employee, so I just get to waffle with you guys about drones and learn a whole lot more. But in my time, it's really become apparent how much Consortiq has grown in that time. We really are expanding. It just seems the company is growing from strength to strength at the moment.
Yeah, it's interesting because our offering is quite broad in terms of what we can actually do and deliver. And what we find is that it resonates with certain parts of the industry and specific industries that are looking to, I suppose, enhance what they do using this technology. So what we find is that we have an idea or an ideal customer or client, and they don't always necessarily land in our inbox, and we get an absolute obscure client that has a need, that has a requirement, and we happily take it on, and we try and enhance what they do using our tech.
All right, so what I'm going to do then, I'm going to put you to the slaughter, I suppose, really. I was trying to find a nice way of putting it, but I'm not. I'm going to put you to the slaughter. Can you give us some examples then of some of the projects that you've most recently worked on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want this to turn into a podcast where it's like, top 10 slogans and, how, but essentially what most of our clients are coming to us, they're trying to find a more efficient way, of capturing data that they've been doing for years in a traditional method. They're just trying to find a better way. And that's majority of the people who come to us saying, look, I've got this problem. It takes hours for us to either inspect or collect data over a large area. There must be a better way. Most of the time, drones are the answer, because you can attach whatever sensor at the bottom to go and collect that valuable data for them. But we also are in the space where we are using handheld devices or tripod mounted devices to capture data and bring it all together. From a spectrum of things that we do, we've gone from, sports analytics using drones, with a, the largest, I suppose, sports team or sports outfit within the UK, all the way through to watching a company blast aggregate from the side of a quarry, and everything else that goes in the middle. So it's pretty unique perspective that I get of the industry, especially seeing what I'd say from the initial interaction with the client through to maybe a project being delivered. That's really helpful when I talk to others about what we can and can't do.
Right, I see. So you get approached by Tom, Dick, or Sally saying, I've got this project. We need to capture data for our particular project, and we need it because we need to analyze what's going on over time, or we want to see the effects of something being put into place. Can you help us? Currently, we have this method. Would using a drone improve it? Is that the essential, the starter conversation?
Yeah, and actually some of them have already jumped the gun and they've said, look, we've purchased a drone and we think we've got the right person to come and do it. And sometimes you have to sort of get them to take a step back or two. It's all about, what are they trying to achieve? How does the data need to be presented to them? Does it need to be mixed with software they already have as part of their own process or workflow? And what we typically find is people go out there and say, I've purchased a drone that, it was a few $1,000s, nothing too expensive, and we've pinpointed that person over there to go and do it. And then when you actually talk about what they actually need, that drone doesn't capture the data in the way that they want it to be captured, and that person potentially isn't the engineer or isn't the surveyor, that is normally out there doing the job of collecting that data in the first place. So we have to sort of not necessarily realign, but just saying, well, what you've got is fine. But to actually get to where you want to be is a little bit more challenging. Then actually, if you choose the right drone with the right sensor and use the right person, that it typically collects that data in the first place. It's a lot easier to train somebody up that has the right skill set to analyze the data than it is to get someone who's a drone pilot that doesn't do that to be to the same level. Does that make sense?
It does indeed. So I'm trying to work out what $1 million in pounds would be. £800,000 question, something like that. The £800,000 question, very British audience, this one, or the Americans going, "Oh my God!" Right? Well, the $1 million question, right? Let's just keep it fine for our American audience. What exactly are the reasons that companies are coming to you with? I'm just thinking, if a company's got a process in place, okay, and they're capturing data and they've been looking at this data over, say, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever, why are they coming to you now and suddenly wanting to change the method? Because there is an old saying that if it ain't broke, don't try and fix it.
Yeah, I just think that everyone is acutely aware of operating costs. Now, give an example. Every year, large organizations will just sign off a budget that says that we need £250,000 worth of scaffolding this year. And they don't question, well, why? Is there not a better way? But I think what we're seeing, Bryn, is companies are questioning that. They are looking at that and going, why do we spend £250,000 every year on scaffolding? Because that's a lot. That's a lot of money just to write off at the beginning of the year before we even start work. So we get a lot of people scaffolding as an example, where a drone could be used to determine exactly where the scaffolding needs to be. So rather than it completely surrounding the facade of a building, it might only be used tactically. Same example. Someone might be having to tread a certain area weekly, and they need repeatable, reliable data, where a drone, semi-automated, can throw it up in half the time and get you the same data, maybe to a slightly more improved accuracy than traditionally captured. But I just think people are more aware. They're more aware of the costs that are out there because of operational reasons, and maybe COVID sort of driven some of the last year. Clients, they sort of know what they want to know, and then when you start introducing the technology, they then start asking more questions. Can it do that? Is it able to do this? If I was to capture that in a certain way, would I be able to do that again in a week's time? And they start building. So they come to us with an idea and a problem that they have traditionally had, and then we develop that. And what you then find is they start knowing what they didn't know, and then the possibilities are relatively endless. And I've said this at the beginning, not everything we do is with drones, and there are the odd occasion where you say drone is not the answer. Let's try and work out what is. And we don't just sort of stop and say goodbye, handshakes, and that's it. We try and help as much as we can, but we focus predominantly on the UAS drone platform and technology.
You mentioned COVID there, and you suggested that maybe that has had an impact. Do you think that companies have looked at their current methods, and maybe COVID has had an impact with how they can manage to get staff on the site to do the inspections with the restrictions that are in place? So do you think not only has COVID impacted with people being able to get to the sites, but also with maybe reevaluating how their resources are used financially as well as manpower?
I go back to every year they sign off an arbitrary figure for, equipment, tools that they need to conduct work, and they've been doing that for years. And I do think, like you just said there, that they've reevaluated that part, and actually finding a better way or a better solution to solve the same problem. What's also interesting is that although to get set up and to get someone trained and to purchase the the drone or the sensor that's needed to do it, does come at a cost. So the cost of the acquisition of the drone and the sort of software and the technology will be absorbed over time compared to sort of traditional methods.
So the initial outlay of getting up and running with a drone or a UAS system, a UAS system, then do you ever have to have this uncomfortable conversation with these customers and say, look, you've put X amount of money aside for this year. What you need to do is put X plus a bit for this year, and that will then save you a bit more come year 3.
Yeah, and it's working out where their budget is, and is that appropriate for what they're trying to achieve. Also, sometimes that sometimes isn't aligned either. Where every 2 years you might need to purchase some new hardware, software. Technology evolves, so therefore keep current. But in the same breath, they don't necessarily budget in that way.
People have budgeted a certain way, maybe a 1-year budget naturally, or a 3-year budget, but they haven't taken into consideration that maybe they need to look 5 years down the line. And although the initial outlay for their UAS platform and what they need to achieve is going to be more to start with, come year 2, year 3, year 4, actually it's significantly reduced from what there normally would be. So over time, it's a long-term gain rather than a short-term gain, right?
Yeah, exactly. And they need to future-proof their project, or their capability as a UAS capability. They need to future-proof it, and by doing so, having that budget year in, year out will enable them to keep current and do what they want to do. It makes sense talking out loud about it, but some people are relatively short-sighted and just budget for the initial training, initial hardware, and getting it set up. They don't think about the longevity of that.
So we've focused a fair bit then on the challenges really that businesses faced with, I suppose, getting their minds into using a drone and the best one for them, and the initial cost outlay and things like that, and having to future-proof their processes. Are there any other challenges that you can consider or identify that businesses have come to you with that you hadn't previously thought about when you came to Consortiq?
One of the biggest challenges that we face is just speaking to the right person. Within the industry, there isn't a job title that necessarily looks after, a drone team or UAS team. So trying to identify that right person in that right organization is always a challenge. But what we do find is that once we do speak to them and we do start having conversation and dialogue, etc., it's very easy for us to identify and for them to do business, and for us to be able to accommodate the particular issues that they're trying to resolve. It's always a challenge just to identify that person, because it could be an innovation specialist in one company, it could be the individual that's in charge of sort of health and safety in another, and we've even found it where it's an intern that's been tasked with setting up a drone program, and when you're out there and you're from a marketing perspective trying to put content together, and you're trying to enable that to resonate to all the different industries and all the different personas, it's really difficult. It's a challenging job. So hopefully the listeners have checked the website and the content that we put out. It's varied, and we've done that intentionally, because trying to hit that right person at that right moment of time is always a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know, by the way, if you've done anything wrong, but the police did sound like they're about to knock down your door just then.
No comment.
Nicely dodged. Nicely dodged. You've been on plenty of sites, quarry surveys, gas storage silos, surveying and inspection work for all these different organizations. Yeah. When you talk to these clients, do they suddenly get a light bulb moment where they suddenly go, we could use a drone for this, and we've also got this, and actually I didn't think of that sense, so that's a great idea, and with this we can now do this, and we can monitor our silo over the period of 5 years and see if any issues that are coming up, maybe the wear and tear or something. Have you found this light bulb moment with companies? Has it started to resonate more as the years go on?
Yeah, and then what you have to do is sort of go, calm down, take deep breaths. Let's just breathe. Let's work out what it is, because like I said at the beginning, you can do most things with drones and capture data in a way that you want to manipulate it or make it useful to you. We were on site not that long ago, and we were capturing data which will be captured maybe every 3 or 4 months, so they can do sort of preventative maintenance on some gas silos. And we were just chatting about, I suppose, the efficiency of the pipe work that they've got when they transfer the gas, and where they typically get problems or maintenance issues where U-bends or 90-degree angles, or during through like the pumps where they get loss of heat and cold, and we said, well, we've got the thermal sensor in the back of the van. Once we finish recording this data today, we can put it on and have a little look for you. And you're right, you get that light bulb moment where they're like, oh my God, this is possible. And it's great. We then show them the thermal in action. We take some screenshots and some video. They pass it through to the relevant people, and it gets the conversation going in another direction. That's not what we were there for, but because we were on site, we were having a conversation about some of their other issues they're having. We just so happened to have the thermal camera in the sensor in the back of the van, and we were able to demonstrate it. But that brings value in a different way. And even at the very beginning, because I was there at the very beginning when we had the first initial conversations with them, it wasn't even on their to-do list, their worry list. It just wasn't even mentioned. But being on site and having that, can we do this, can we do that, is this possible, it's useful for us to be able to offer that.
Yeah, something. Whoa, there! Just slow down, folks. Just slow down. So, What's next? We've seen that there's a lot of digital twins being able to be created. There's a lot of sensor work out there. I know that detection of gas leaks in pipelines, that's been looked at as well. And there does seem to be sensors for everything that are being created at the moment. But what is the next big thing, do you think, that's coming the drone or the UAS industry way?
There are quite a couple key players out there at the moment, and without naming any names, sort of autonomous drones that do critical infrastructure inspection. That's going to become huge. It I suppose enables the workflow from capturing the imagery or the data into a usable model. It's smoother between those workflows, where at the moment it's a relatively manual process. It enables a skilled individual to be able to plan the route, fly the route, capture. But these drones that are coming onto the market now, that is fully autonomous, that will be able to scan every inch of critical infrastructure and be repeatable, and accuracy is incredible. Like, that's one to watch. That's exciting for me. For the industry, there's so many. I mean, just look at the universities across the UK. Look at things like Loughborough are doing, Cranfield, Southampton University. These are all people that we worked with in the past. They are doing some weird and wonderful things with drones. They aren't necessarily backed or funded by large organisations that have the logo associated to them, but they are out there that we might see some of this technology coming onto the market within the next 5 or 10 years. It's not for me to say some of the stuff that I've seen them do or what they're working on, but I think it's exciting that we've got that ambition within the UK to drive it forward, and we've got sort of the leading universities out there. That's also exciting for us because we get to work with them as well.
Yeah, so if we got heard of Roswell, New Mexico, it's like Roswell, New Malden around here. The lights that are in the sky might not be aliens, they might be drones. Who knows? Listen, Lee, it's been absolutely fantastic to chat to you. And every now and then we get somebody from Consortiq on the Consortiq-based podcast that this is Unmanned Uncovered. But it's nice to speak to you to find out what's going on with the projects. And I think really, I'd like to give you a small opportunity, because I don't want this to be a huge advertising episode, which it isn't. It's a chat to you about what you do. But if anybody is interested, anyone listening to this, our beautiful listener that's driving in their car right now or sitting in their kitchen eating their toast, who's listening along, how should they approach you? And how do they go about getting in touch? And what is the way forward? If someone comes to you and says, I've got a project, how should they go about contacting you? And why should they bother contacting, say, Consortiq over another company?
In my weird and wonderful mind, I'd like them to think, well, before they even think about drones, they think about sort of Consortiq, and that sounds cheesy, but come to us at the earliest possible stage. Talk to us about what it is you're trying to do, and let us help you sort of start off in the right direction, because it's all about that initial engagement, and that initial sort of project planning is half the battle. And you might be the technical experts in the field that you're in, and you might be the technical experts in the way that which data is collected and the work process that you currently work within, but we can help you integrate our way of collecting data or a different way of collecting data into what you currently do. That's our specialty. And actually, the wackier, the more weird and wonderful the project is, that gets us excited. So yeah, just engage with us as early as possible. That's all I can say.
Very
and the
good
rest
advice.
of it, and the rest of it is straightforward. Hopefully not too long from now, we'll be able to talk about some of the stuff that we're doing now where they've done exactly that. And their end result will be that they're able to do something pretty cool. And we're working on a couple of them at the moment. Just can't talk about them. So hopefully maybe in a few months' time, we might be able to openly talk about it. But, engage with us early.
An update podcast episode will be coming your way at some stage. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think the thing I get from this, Lee, from talking to people from Consortiq, and as I say, I'm not affiliated with Consortiq apart from that I do this podcast, is that if your use case, and this is very much a term I've learned from you guys, if your use case doesn't fit a UAS platform or isn't right for drones, Consortiq will say to you, don't buy a drone, don't use a drone. It's not the right tool. So, don't just think that you're going to be sold something that won't be right for you. Just have a conversation. And it always seems to be very open and honest, which I think is kind of refreshing in 2021.
Yeah. We don't just always push the one agenda, and hopefully it will fit, square peg round hole,
Exactly.
that's not how we work. So yeah, I think some of the stuff that we're doing on the side is a direct link to exactly what you just said. The person or the organization's come to us with a particular need, we've said, drones would be cool and great, but it's not the best way of doing what you're wanting to do. So, we've found another way, a different way, and we're working still with them on that. So, yeah, it's encouraging.
Certainly is. Lee, I know you're off on annual leave now, so I don't want to hold you up any longer. Enjoy the next few days, and thank you very much for coming on Consortiq's own podcast, the company you work for. Thanks for coming on. Lee Barfoot, great to chat to you.
You are very welcome. Thank you.
My thanks to Lee Barfoot there. Lee is the Commercial Manager, UK and Europe, Middle East and Africa at Consortiq. And if you want to get in touch with him or any of the team at Consortiq, just search Consortiq, that's Consortiq with a Q at the end, .com. You've been listening to another episode of Unmanned Uncovered with me, Bryn Lucas. Thanks very much for your time. If you'd like to listen to more episodes, just search your podcast provider or once again go to the Consortiq website. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe and tell all your friends how good this podcast is. I hope you'll join me again for another episode of Unmanned Uncovered very soon. Until then, stay safe and thanks for listening.